How old are you? I'm 28. Where do you live? I live in Kuchan, which is in Hokkaido. When I first came to Japan, I lived in Aichi in a town called Anjo. Then I moved to Tokyo and lived there for about 4 years. Actually, where I lived wasn't officially Tokyo, but the station closest to my house was. That was Hibarioka. And my place was actually Kurihara, which is in Saitama. Where are you from? I'm from New Zealand, which is also called Aotearoa. What part of New Zealand are you from? Well, I grew up in the Coromandel Peninsula, which is in the North Island. And I was born in Dunedin and lived in the Coromandel from when I was 2 until when I left high school and went to university. And I went to university first in Wellington. I spent 3 years there doing a BA, and then I moved to Christchurch and spent another year at university down there because there was a course that I wanted to do in Christchurch. And the last place I lived in New Zealand was in Auckland, and I was studying part-time then and working. How long have you been in Japan? I came here in April 2001, so more than 5 years. Do you go back to New Zealand often? No, I've only been back once. What's the best way to improve my English? Well, there are so many excellent things you can do to improve your English, so I don't know about the best, but I talked about some of my ideas in show number 13. Where do you teach, or where have you taught? When I was in IT, I worked for a company called ECC, that's a private language school, so I taught there for a year. And I taught many kinds of lessons there, including classes for kids, conversation lessons for adults, as well as regular lessons for adults, which was more grammar and that kind of thing. And I taught a returnees class. Then in Tokyo, I taught private lessons for 4 years, and I also worked at a junior high school and a high school. I worked at the junior high school for 4 years and high school for a year, and I also worked at a university for 6 months. They were all part-time. And I also did other odd jobs like a bit of translating or rewriting. I even worked as a model once for an art class. That was interesting, but hard work, sitting perfectly still in a chair. I'm thinking of teaching English in Japan. Can you tell me about it? Well, I really enjoy it, so I definitely recommend it, and there are always a lot of jobs going, so you shouldn't have a problem finding a job. And there's lots of excellent, useful information on the internet, for example, teachinginjapan.com, so I recommend reading as much as you can. How did you study Japanese? Well, I basically started studying Japanese since I came to Japan. When I got here, I knew a few basic words, but hardly anything. So I've studied in many different ways. I went to group lessons at a church for a while when I first came here, and I took lessons in Nagoya, and then in Tokyo I took private lessons for about 3 years. And I did a lot of homework, just studying out of textbooks. I have a massive pile of Japanese textbooks. And I took tests to give myself motivation to study and a goal to study for. I took a test called JLPT in English, or Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken. So I took that test for 4 years. There's 4 levels, so I did level 4, 3, 2 and 1. And last year I studied a lot, like every day for up to like 5 hours a day. Just doing exercises out of textbooks basically. And I did many other things to help my Japanese improve. I did things that would make me study Japanese. I tried to put myself in situations where I would have to use Japanese. Because the difficult thing about being in Japan and trying to study Japanese is that everybody in Japan speaks some English, and a lot of people are really keen to use their English, so that makes it hard for people like me trying to learn Japanese. So I did things like I studied karate, and at the dojo nobody speaks English, so that's a great environment for learning Japanese. I watched Japanese movies, even if I couldn't understand them, just force myself to watch and try and guess what it's about. And the software on my computer is in Japanese. Even if I have an option to have English or Japanese, I usually choose Japanese because it forces me to study more. Have you learnt any other languages? Yeah, I've learnt French. I started studying that at high school, so I spent 5 years at high school studying French and 2 years at university. And I also did 2 student exchanges, so I went to Tahiti for 6 weeks and France for 2 months. And when I was at university I studied Māori for 3 years. What were you doing in New Zealand before you came to Japan? Well, right before I came, I was working in a bar in Auckland, so I was a bartender. And I studied at university for 5 years, and I've also worked in radio. Why did you come to Japan? Because I wanted to be able to see things from another perspective. One of the main things that I'm interested in is journalism. Since I was about 14, I've wanted to be a journalist, and I've done a bit of work in journalism, and that's what I studied at university. So when I finished my journalism course, I was 20, and I could have gone on to work as a journalist then, but I was just really aware of my lack of life experience. And I thought to be a really good journalist, the more I could see things from different perspectives, the better. So you can read about a country and visit it for a short period of time and gain some understanding of that culture. But I think to get a deeper understanding, you really need to live in the country for a while and learn the language. So why did I choose Japan? Well, it wasn't because I had a particular interest in Japan. Like some people are really interested in anime or martial arts or whatever. In fact, it was kind of the opposite. When I was a child and a teenager, I wasn't really interested in Asia at all. I was more interested in Polynesia or Europe or Africa. When I was about 8 or so, I remember wishing that I lived in America because it seemed so cool off TV. And then I wished I lived in Australia because I really loved rugby league. And I also wanted to live on a Pacific island like Samoa or Fiji because Polynesian culture seems so cool. So when I decided to come to Japan, I was living in Christchurch. Christchurch is one of the places where a lot of Japanese tourists come. So on the main street there's a lot of souvenir shops and a lot of buses full of Japanese tourists come. When I was studying at university, I was always kind of overwhelmed at my great lack of knowledge in general. But I remember looking at them and thinking, I don't know anything about these people. I don't understand their language. I don't understand their fashion. I don't know if they're Japanese or Chinese or Korean. In fact, come to think of it, I don't even know what's the difference between Japan and China and Korea. And there are millions of people living in Asia, so how can I know so little about it? So then I thought if I really want to expand my mind, I should go to Asia. And one of the girls in my journalism class had been on something called the JET program. So she'd stayed in Japan for 2 years and she really enjoyed it and recommended it. So I thought, yeah, I'll go to Japan. Do you enjoy living in Japan? Yes, definitely. Obviously, I guess, because I've been here so long, and if I didn't like it, I would have gone home a long time ago. Why do you like living in Japan? Well, that's a hard question to answer, because it's not like I think Japan is better or worse than any other country. And I think I'd actually be happy living anywhere. So I guess the simple answer is just that I'm really enjoying what I've been doing. Studying Japanese, teaching English, doing karate. Maybe I should make a different video about what I love about Japan. Yeah, I might do that sometime. Do people really use these videos to learn English? Yes. How could someone study English by watching these videos? Well, there are many ways these videos could be used to study English. For example, they could be used for self-study. A student could study at home, practicing watching the videos and doing conversations with Sarah exercises. Or they could watch the news, stick news, and there's the script there. So, for example, if you don't understand some of the vocabulary, you can cut and paste the script into something like rikai.com if you're Japanese and check the vocabulary that way. Stick news, for example, can be used in many different ways too. I've used it in lessons by getting students to watch the news once and then stopping the video and getting them to tell me what they understood. Then reading the script, talking about any vocabulary, and also using that news as a starting point for a discussion. A teacher using the videos in a classroom might use what I've talked about in the introduction as a starting point for a discussion as well. Another example is a teacher might be talking about the differences in English in different countries, and they might pick up something that I've said and say they're an American teacher and say, well, Sarah says it this way, but in America we say it like this, or whatever. I'm an English teacher and I want to use your shows in my class. Is this okay? Yes, go ahead, please do, thank you. Why are you making these videos? Well, fame, fortune and world domination, of course. But apart from that, I just think it's a really good idea and I didn't see anyone else doing it, so I decided to do it myself. When I started teaching privately and also teaching at junior high school, I spent a lot of time making my own resources, which is really interesting and enjoyable. But I thought it would be even more satisfying if I made resources which I could use and other people could also use. So yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about it and planning and getting ideas and finally started in April. The thing I really enjoy about it is that it gives me the opportunity to do a variety of things that I'm interested in. So writing, journalism, research, language study, the English language, art, broadcasting, technology. I really wanted to learn more about the internet and computers too, so I think one of the best ways to learn something is just to start doing something. So I've learned a lot since I first started, and that's really exciting. So making these videos is kind of a hobby, I guess, because I don't get paid, but it's also work related because I do use them for my teaching English work. And I take it seriously, and I'm always trying to improve them and do a good job. Do you make these videos by yourself? Yes, I do pretty much everything. Now I'm talking into a camera which is on a tripod, and I get all the ideas and do all the research and writing and editing. My boyfriend does help me a bit, which I really appreciate. He holds the camera sometimes and watches the videos and says, good. And he says, don't worry, you're not really a retard, if I say a bad comment. What equipment do you use? Okay, my computer is Compaq NX9030, digital video camera, Panasonic NVGS70, digital camera, Panasonic Lumix DMC-FX9, video editing software, Adobe Premiere Elements. I don't know if I can really recommend any of that stuff. The computer seems alright, I just bought it because it was cheap. That camera is okay. The colour was going a bit funny for a while, but it seems to be right now, so. I do really like this camera because it has a nice big screen on the back and it's pretty easy to use. As for the editing software, I was using Video Studio 7 for the first month, and the Adobe one is a lot better, I think. I can't actually remember why, but I remember when I first changed I was like, oh wow, this is great, I couldn't do it with the other one. If I had lots of money, I think I might buy the next one up, which I think is Adobe Pro something. But I mean, this is fine for now. How long does it take you to make one show? Well, that's a hard question to answer. The simple answer is a long time. Depends if you include the time when I get sidetracked on the internet. Because I look quite a lot of stuff up, like on Wikipedia or whatever. And even if I'm just searching for a simple fact, I start reading, and wow, this is really interesting, and before I know it, like an hour's gone past. The fastest I can do it is probably 3 hours, but it's usually more than that. Why don't you comb your hair? Well, I have dreadlocks, so I've had dreadlocks for 8 years, and one of the reasons why I got dreadlocks was because I don't like combing my hair. I'd rather spend time doing other things, like studying or something. So if you don't like my hairstyle, then I'm sorry, but you're just going to have to get over it, or go and watch CNN or something. I'm an American, and I can barely understand your poor pronunciation. The narrator can't pronounce R sounds. Not a good way to teach Japanese to speak English. Okay, these aren't questions, but I've had a few comments like this, so I thought I'd better say something. I mean, I could just delete those comments, but I think they're kind of amusing, and also interesting that people would think that. I guess a lot of English speakers reading that would just think, oh, whatever. But an English student might think, what? Is her English bad, or is her pronunciation wrong? So my answer to that would be, no, there's nothing wrong with my English, there's nothing wrong with my pronunciation. There are different kinds of English in different countries and different accents. I think it's kind of understandable that an American might make those comments, because America is such a big country with a big population, and they produce a lot of media, so a lot of TV shows, movies, music. So I've never been to America, but I imagine it would be possible for somebody to only watch American TV, watch American movies, and listen to American music. So they might not even realise that there are other ways of speaking English, or even if they do realise, they're just so unfamiliar with it that it sounds wrong to them. Whereas New Zealand's such a small country, the population's really small. So if you watch TV, most of the shows are from other countries, like America and England, Australia. So we grow up listening to all these different accents. So I noticed, for example, when I came to Japan and I had co-workers from many different countries, I had no problem understanding them, but they had trouble understanding me. So the way I speak has changed a bit since I came to Japan, especially my choice of vocabulary. If I know something's a Kiwi word or expression, then I don't usually use it. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that most Americans can understand what I say, so it's okay. What does stick news mean? Well, I wanted to do a news segment because I'm interested in journalism and because I think that topics from the news are interesting to study. So my style of news for Stick News is a cross between education and news. So I kind of assume that people don't know anything about the topic. So instead of just saying the UN blah blah blah, I say the UN is an organisation which da 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 da. I think this is really useful because a lot of news from another country you can't understand without the background to it. And it's called Stick News because I use stick figures. I got the idea of using stick figures because I often use stick figures to explain things in lessons. When I'm teaching English, I almost never use Japanese, that's my policy, because I think it's a lot better for the student. It would be a lot easier for the teacher just to say a word in Japanese, but I think it's more useful for the student if you explain what the word means in English, or use a gesture, or draw a simple drawing. And I'm always amazed at how much I can explain with just a simple drawing. So the idea of those drawings is to help people understand with the pictures and the words. And I think it's really useful too. I've tried in lessons giving the script to a student and getting them to read it and saying, okay, can you tell me what the news is about? And they're like, not really, I don't really get it. And then I show them the drawings and then they read while looking at the drawings or by watching the video. And then after that they're like, oh, I get it now. I noticed you never use meat in the cooking show. Are you vegetarian? Yes, I'm vegan actually, which is a kind of vegetarian. So I don't use animal products. Can you please speak more slowly? Well, there are many different theories about what's the best way to learn a language. So there are many different methods, many different styles. So this is my show, so I'm doing it according to my ideas about language learning and language teaching. And my ideas and opinions change all the time too, of course, as I learn more. But for now, this is what I think about the speed at which I speak. I try and speak at a normal pace on purpose because I think it's really useful to listen to somebody speaking at a normal speed. I provide a script for all the shows, so the idea is that people watch the video and it's on the internet so they can watch it many times and download it if they want to. And if they don't catch a word or if they didn't understand something, then they can read the script. I think English study resources that use people speaking at a really slow speed can be useful too, especially for complete beginners. If that's what you're looking for, then yeah, there's already a lot of stuff out there. Do you get many nasty comments on YouTube? Only a couple, but hardly any. I don't think I'm popular enough for that. What is your job now? What do you do? Well, I just moved to a different place, so I don't have a paid job at the moment, but I'm going to start work soon. I'm going to start doing some internet lessons, so if you're interested in studying English over the internet, then send me an email and I'll tell you more about it. I'm also going to do some other work in Kuchan. Now I'm looking for some freelance translating and rewriting work. I don't think anyone in Kuchan's actually watching this, but if you are and you know of anyone that's looking for someone to do some translating or rewriting, then please get in touch. So, I hope that answered some of your questions. I'm sure I didn't answer everything, so I'm going to do another FAQ video. So if you have a question that I didn't answer in this video, please ask me and I'll talk about it next time. Bye!